This is the 1986 Ford F-150 that I will be putting the running boards on. iBoard running boards. Okay, so we have the iBoard running boards. So there's a box inside the box. So let's undo the straps. So this is what's inside the box. They're all individually wrapped, as you can see. And there's nuts and bolts and instructions. And there's the iBoards, running boards. It's all very well packaged. Alright, there's all the parts. They've all been unwrapped, had some heavy duty plastic on them. A nut and bolt collection. Brackets. Instructions. This set is for a 1980 to 96 Ford F-Series. These are all the parts that you get. There's the running boards. So here's the instructions for the iBoard. First is just the instruction page. Page 1 has all the parts and numbers. All the parts are there. The count was right. Nothing. Page 2, page 3, and page 4. That's all of them. They're a little, took me a little while to understand what was going on, but all in all, it's really quite simple. So these coupling nuts, 2 are coarse, 2 are fine. You can tell which are which if you take the fine bolts and thread them into the fine coupling nuts, and the coarse bolts and thread them into the coarse. That way you won't make a mistake. So here we have the passenger side cab mounting bolt. You can see it's a little rusty. I'm going to wire brush it and put some penetrating oil on it before I put on the coupler bolt. It should go on easier that way. Alright, it's been cleaned up and oiled. Now it's ready for the coupler. So here's the 1 3/4 inch coarse bolt that you're going to use to mount the bracket onto the motor or the chassis mount up to the coupler. The coupler right there, spacer, mount, and this is the bolt. Make sure you get the right bolt. Okay, here's the location for the rear seat belt mount. That's the fine thread. And here we have the DRB, driver's rear bracket, or PRB, passenger side rear bracket. They're all marked. It's the longer one of the two, and it only has one hole in the end. Here's the frame mount. It's the rear passenger side mount. It just slides on the frame and you put the bolt in to tighten it down. So it shows the rear mounting bracket being right in front of the little pin kind of deal hanging down. So you put that right in front. So it's in front of the pin. That's where I'm going to go with it. And then it shows this bracket with the elongated hole. Going towards the back. Well, here's the first glitch. Right here. Measure that right there. That's going all the way as far as it'll go, up into the seat belt. That's the coupler. Go down to the bolt. And you can see the bolt's too long. I noticed that when I threaded it in by hand that it was bottoming out before it even began to get tight. So I'm going to have to take some off of this bolt in order to make it work. Probably 1/4 inch. So rather than shorten the bolt 1/4 inch, I added 3 flat washers that I had. Let's see how this works. Might shorten it later. So this support bracket has 2 holes, and it suggests or shows using the outer one, this one right here. So I'm going to use that one first. On the rear bracket, put in the support bracket first, pointing towards the back. Had to use spacers. Then use this here bottom bracket. This is 1/2 inch. Also, it's actually 13 millimeter, but you can use 1/2 inch on it. This is an American 5/8. And once you get it aligned, I'm going to tighten this one under here. Tighten this to the plate, then the plate to the bracket that mounts to the frame. Last thing to tighten is where it mounts to the frame. Where it mounts to the frame, that's 16 millimeter or 5/8, and this is 18 millimeter. So this rear bracket seems to be mounted pretty secure. Yeah, pretty secure. So there's the running board on the passenger side. '86 F150 4x2. So here's parts for the driver's side. D is for drivers. DFM, driver's front mount, which is different than the passenger front mount. And you get your tube. These 2 bolts are longer than this bolt. This bolt here is used for the bracket, the support bracket for the rear. And the longer bolts, they're used to mount the front lower support. So, and there's the bolts that are used for the rear mounting. So here's the tools that I used to mount this. These bolts are 13 millimeter, also 1/2 inch. The square are 10 millimeter to mount the running boards. That's 10 millimeter. These bolts are 5/8, and the coupler itself is 3/4 or 19 millimeter. This is what I use to measure the depth. I use that to measure the depth because these bolts are too long. Actually, I ended up just putting extra washers in. These bolts are 18 millimeter. So I have a wrench and a socket to tighten those down. This is the mount for the cab mount for the front. And you put the coarse extension on there, thread it on. That's how you can tell if it's coarse or not. Use the bolts, are easier to see than the threads. tighten that down. So because the bolts are too long, I added an extra couple washers rather than grind them down. The mount, front mount, upper mount, the two holes go out towards the outside, and the one slot on the top, that's where the spacer goes. Yeah, that's where the spacer goes. So you put the spacer on first, and then you put that on and bolt it down. Don't tighten it yet. So once that's on, and it's not tightened down yet, you take the front bottom bracket, has two holes in it, and it goes right up there using those bolts right there. So I slid this one all the way to the back. You can see the slide. Tighten that down, and then these I went ahead and slid all the way down. Tighten them down, and make sure you have it heading outside straight. You can still move it around later or loosen it if you have to, but you can see how it's coming out. This is the driver's side rear seat belt bolt sticking through, and here we have the fine thread coupler. Thread that on there and tighten it down. So here again, the bolt being too long, I ended up adding a couple extra flat washers. And it goes into the elongated side, and it'll be slid all the way forward. Kind of like that. And you want to put it in, straighten it out, and tighten it down. So with this mounted, and that's leaning forward or facing forward, mount the lower bracket using the slotted hole and slide it all the way. Put it on the bottom hole here and slide it all the way out and tighten it down using the shorter bolt. That's 13mm wrench. Okay, so with this all mounted, tighten it down. There's no support back there yet, but straighten it out so it looks straight, comes out. That slot there was slid all the way out as far as it'll go this way when I tighten it down. So now with it like this, now you can locate the back brackets. These brackets back here. That one down there, and that one up there. That one there will slide in and out. It's not mounted yet. So, make sure it's all level. And then once you get the plate in the mounting brackets, this is the rear mounting bracket, it just slides up onto the channel. Tighten up the bolts. Tighten up that bolt first, and then that bolt there. Get these bolts tightened, and then you can tighten up the clamp that goes onto the channel. And then they'll be all pretty stiff, and then you can put on the running boards. Just make sure it's all kind of level. So once the brackets are all tightened down, this rear one's really strong. This one flexes a little more at the front. Front flexes, but once you put the running board on, it's just fine. And the running board has no front or back. So put it on, tighten it down, you'll be good to go. So I put the running board on, and the rear here is as low as it can go. It has a bracket. This here, I'm going to slide the two rear, there's slots in the back. I'm going to slide them up, see if I can't get that a little more level. There's a pretty good gap at the front, and the rear is Not as much gap. So we're going to do that and see what happens. Now this is on the driver's side. I don't know if you can tell or not, but that's slanted down slightly. I went ahead and I have it slid up as far as it'll go. And if you can see the crack there, this isn't quite the same. With this being angled down slightly, we're going to have to angle this down to match the other side. There's a gap. Angle it down so that gap's not there. I'll have to loosen the nuts on that and maybe even loosen that clamp on the frame. But I'll loosen it all up and realign some more. Okay, so I readjusted the angle and now you can see it's setting flat. And I retighten these up. It's a little bit of an angle down, but it sets flat now. So, slide the running board all the way out, and tighten down the 10mm bolts, and let's see what it looks like. There you have it. They're both installed. After making the adjustments, it leveled itself out pretty good. Seems to be pretty sturdy. So, I weigh a couple 100 pounds. And it's sturdy enough for me. So, there it is. '86 Ford F150 with its new iBoard running boards. They look really nice on there, so I'm pleased with it. The only thing I would say is the bolts were a little long. Had to put a couple extra washers. Other than that, no biggie. So on the passenger side, there's where the front mount comes, close to the end. And the rear mount is also close near the end. And that's as I put the support, I don't know if you can see there or not, it's going to the back. Okay, and then on the driver's side, not much you can do about the front, so it's where it is. And the rear, I went ahead and aimed the support towards the front instead of the back. That moved the support back a little bit, and I think it made it a little stronger. Just preference, I would imagine. They both seem to be pretty strong, either way you want to do it. But I like them, so, and I'm not going to change it because one's as good as the next. '86 F150.